Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. Welcome to the Clutter Fairy Weekly for January 21st, 2020. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the latest webcast of the new year. We're going to meet every Tuesday at noon, and so we can talk about organizing tips and tricks and answer all of your questions. And we've been having great participation, people making comments on the videos, and then we go and circle back and talk about those again the next week. And so it's been really helpful for you to make your comments. We appreciate it so much.
Before we get into today's topics, just a couple quick notes for anybody joining us for the first time. If you're participating in the Zoom meeting, please feel free to share your comments and questions via the chat, and I'll try to make sure Gayle gets a chance to respond to them before we move on to the next topic. You can use the raise hand feature that I mentioned a moment ago to let me know that you'd like to ask a question or make a comment yourself via audio or video. We're streaming this webcast live on Facebook, so you can also share your questions and suggestions in the comments there, and I'll pass them along to Gayle so she can try to answer as many as possible while we're live. During the live webcast, you can also call into the meeting using the number at the top right of the screen. Okay, down to business. First, we wanted to return to the topic of long-term storage of family photos, videos, and stories. This came up last week when we were talking about clutter and aging, and viewer Ruth on YouTube said, the problem with using current computer programs to document stories about furniture and family heirlooms is that those programs, Evernote or Dropbox, for example, may not be supported or accessible 20 years from now. She suggests using an old-fashioned notebook and printed pictures to document your stories, since those never expire.
Ruth is right about the danger of getting locked into proprietary formats. If you save your photos and stories in files that can only be opened by a particular application, and then the application developer goes out of business or they stop supporting older versions, we've all had that experience where they start saying, you have such an old version, we're just not going to talk to you anymore. And if that happens, then you've got files that you can't really open. And so this is a potential problem. There's also a problem keeping your files on media that might disappear. So the one that springs to mind is, do you remember zip drives or floppy disks? We all have floppy disks that have photos or documents on them that now you have to go to a special place where somebody maintains the old readers and old machines so that you can read those zip drives and you can read those floppy disks. So we have already experienced the evolution of media past its useful life into the next version. And so she's right, it is a potential problem. We've dug a little deeper into the topic and come up with some strategies to help you hedge your bets as you preserve your family history. And the first thing I'm going to say is that we did find a Library of Congress reference where they talked about how to preserve all kinds of creative media. And so we're going to give you that link so that you can go read in much greater detail, because they address all kinds of media and what they suggest is the best way to preserve that stuff. And so that's a good place to start. Digital Trends magazine suggested a strategy for creating the most endurable electronic archives possible. And one of the things they said was there's all those file formats that we're used to using, like JPEGs and PNG and TIFF, TIFF, and MPEG for videos. They're all sort of standard formats now. They've been standardized to work across all kinds of applications. And as a result, they are sort of a stable standard that can be adopted and will still remain likely as we go from application to application or things change. They will all be designed to create and read and edit these kinds of standard formats. So picking those standard formats is helpful. PDF is also another one that's adopted widely and is a stable standard. So if you combine pictures with text that support PDF and support that output in the photo formats of PNG and JPEG and the document format of PDF, then you can probably expect your saved photos and written material to translate across apps as they evolve, that it will still be readable and usable in future apps. And he also made a note here that text-based content saved as plain text, so that's .txt files, they'll always remain readable by the latest word processing app. So they all recognize TXT as a source of data they can put up onto a document. And so anything that's in text format should be readable as time goes by as well.
One note about that, most people use Microsoft Word. That's kind of become the standard.
Yeah.
But Microsoft Word and any other text editing application nowadays will allow you to save things as plain text. Sometimes they call it, unformatted text, plain text, ASCII, .txt.
Right.
It won't keep any of your formatting. Everything will just be, it'll be nothing but the text. But if you're trying to keep, stories people have told you, transcripts of interviews, anything like that,
notations about photographs,
yeah, that's good enough. That'll be good enough to last forever. And you can still, format things if you want to print a book to share, a photo book to share with people or something like that.
Yeah, then you can add some formatting and keep it when you print the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're talking about how to preserve it over the evolution of the digital tools that we use every day. And so this is how we can hopefully protect yourself as you go from app to app over time. And that those things will continue to be readable as they create new media as well. So when we went from zip drive to something else, and now we're in cloud storage, and who knows what they're going to come up with next, I have no clue. We should still be able to let it all be readable. We're going to put the link to the Library of Congress list of how to preserve your stuff. We're going to put that on the YouTube video in the comments, and then you can go back and sort of dive deeper. One of the things that everybody recommends is when you're printing out something, that you print it on acid-free paper, so that it is something that is designed not to yellow, and the acid doesn't help destroy the paper. So that's why you want acid-free, so that the paper doesn't basically dissolve quicker over time. It'll have a longer shelf life, basically. And so using that special paper, that archival paper, is specifically for that purpose, to add longevity to what you print. And then the other suggestion we have is that cloud storage makes it easy to share with your family members. And so if you're using cloud storage, you might want to use more than one service. So you'll always have an active backup in case one cloud resource suddenly goes belly up, suddenly dries up, suddenly makes it too expensive to access, or puts it behind a firewall or something, that you won't be locked out and everything lost. So it's just a matter of creating a backup of some kind somewhere else, so that it's not all tied to one company. And then there's always the, consider taking a belt and suspenders approach by making digital and physical copies. So a lot of organizers will say, make a digital copy and throw out the physical ones. And sometimes that makes people really nervous for this express reason. If your digital part is destroyed, then you no longer have the paper version. And so both of them have potential shelf life issues. Paper gets destroyed in the flood. Having been through Harvey, a lot of people's photographs got destroyed and mildewed and ruined. And then the digital stuff has its own problems. So the potential for loss exists, and you have to just give yourself some options so that you feel like you have some resources. And the thing about keeping all of the photographs is that it takes up a lot of room. So you might consider, let's make a digital copy of everything, and then let's keep a physical copy of ones that are super important. And what would fall in that category for me would be, here's the photos of your relatives from the 1800s, and there's 6 of them, or there's 15 of them, and they're the only ones that the family has. Well, those would be ones that you would want digital copies, and then you would also want to keep the paper. but then maybe there's, 200 photos that you took before the digital age, before you had camera phones, where you took a bunch of photos of your vacation and the family went on vacation and you took every stop everywhere that you went on your trip to Europe. So maybe you don't want to keep all of those photos. Maybe you want to keep the representative sample of the really good ones, and you can make digital copies of everything. You can keep the representative sample of the really important ones, and then you can let the bulk of those photos go into the recycle bin, so that you're not burdened with boxes and boxes and boxes of photos, but you're also not going to lose them if the digital crashes. So, that's a perfect example of, let's keep the 20% of it that's the best, and let's let 80% of it go, and then you have a paper backup just in case.
Gayle, I know we're going to get the feedback that it sounds like you're suggesting throwing away photos. Can you clarify, like, what would you encourage people to let go of?
The things that you will care about later in life are the pictures of your family members. So there's going to be on vacation, you took a whole bunch of landscape shots, and you took, here's the buildings, and here's the sheep, and here's the store that we went into. And those are not going to be nearly as important as the photos that you took where your family were in the photo. And so you want to err on the side of people that you recognize in your photos and keep those photos. Yes. And thin out the ones that, you don't need your copy of the Eiffel Tower because everybody else has other pictures of the Eiffel Tower, and it'll be fine.
Some professional photographers have probably taken much better pictures of the Eiffel Tower.
Exactly. And then, if you're really, really worried about it, you share a bunch of copies, either paper or digitally, with some really precious stuff to various family members, so that, if you live in flood-prone Harvey land of Houston, you can share some photos with your relatives in Chicago who will not have this issue, and then
relatives who live at higher ground.
So that somebody has good copies of the precious photos that are safe. And you can't do that with 500 boxes of photos. You need to do that with a core sample of really special and valuable ones to the family, and those are the most important to deal with.
Okay. Let's move on. So let's talk about the Texas Bead Retreat. How'd that go?
It was so much fun. Okay, so this is the 21st annual Texas Bead Retreat, and I've been hanging out with these girls for all this time, and we have such a good time. And I found myself thinking about organizing stuff while I was there, because they know that this is what I do for a living now. They have watched me. They were reminding me, my friend Katie was reminding me in the car that she's like, I remember when you were quitting your job and how terrified you were. You're quitting your job. It's like, yeah, it was pretty terrifying. And now it's 13 years later and they can't believe it's been that long. So one of my new jobs at the Texas Beat Retreat, I'm sort of the unofficial keeper of the white elephant table. And what I mean by that is, we've always had a white elephant table where people can bring stuff that they no longer want and offer it for free to anybody in the room that wants to take it. And so how that shifted when I became an organizer is that now I always have a year's worth of things from other clients, craft supplies, bead supplies from other clients that I save all year long and then take to the bead retreat so that I can put it in front of 100 other crafty people. And so they all know that I'm going to come and seed the pile with all the stuff for my clients. And it's a little bit of a feeding frenzy. It's kind of funny. I come in and put stuff over there and then everybody runs over to the table to see what I brought this year. So from one standpoint, it's a great way to exchange things that you no longer want. And so it's a free exchange and everybody puts in things and anybody can take things. And there's no limit on how much you can take. We don't care. If you want it, take it. And so people go over there and paw through and take the things that inspire them and make them happy, and things get redistributed to people that want them. And it's a great solution. And then at the end, of course, we're in a hotel ballroom, so we can't leave it on whatever's left over there. And so I go and sort and pack up what's left. and put it back in my car and bring it home to take to the Texas Art Asylum at the end. So it's a couple of things. One, we create a free exchange in front of people that are likely to want the stuff, and it does all exchange hands, and people go put stuff in and they go out with a whole different pile of stuff, and they're super happy. And some people don't bring anything and they go out with a big ton of stuff, and like that's perfectly fine. It's a great way to create a beady river of stuff, and we put the stuff on the river, and then everybody plucks things out of the river, and it's awesome. And then the other experience that I had about that was the idea of I needed to sort it at the end. So you can imagine that 100 women go and paw all over it, and it's a big mess, right? It's like a feeding frenzy, and it's a big mess. And so at the end, I have to sort all this stuff out and clean it up and rebag it and rebox it so I can take it home and donate it in a way that's easy for the recipient that I'm going to donate it to manage it. And so I needed, a couple of hours to sort it all back into like. And so I didn't want to spend 2 continuous hours at the bead retreat working on it. So I went for, I worked on it for 45 minutes, and then I went and sat down and did something else for a while. And then I went back and sorted some more. And then I got one of my friends to come and help me. And so we did it in stages over time so that it didn't completely interrupt my experience at the bead retreat. And we still, packaged it up in a thoughtful way so that it can be easily donated. I don't want to take a big jumbled pile and dump that on top of the Texas Art Asylum. It just makes it hard for them to redistribute it. And so I want that to be easy for them because I want to keep donating to them. So we spent some time on it, and I just did it in little segments, just like I tell my clients. You need to tackle it in the amount of segments of time that you're willing to work on it. And if you have to stop in the middle and walk away and go do something else and then come back and work on it for another half hour, that's okay. Eventually I got it all done, and it went into the car, and it's sitting in the car waiting to go on to its next destination. And, it was a great, I even took some other craft stuff there. So I brought a bunch of knitting and quilting magazines with me this time that came from a client who was divesting. And about half of that stuff went out with the beater. So it was a great way to redistribute the wealth, I guess is the way to put it. And for people to try things without investing a bunch of money, like crafting costs money, it's expensive. And so if you can look at something or try something before you know that you're interested in it, if you want to get a taste for it and a flavor for it ahead of time, fishing it out of the white elephant for free so that you can try it is a perfect way. And, some of the things that I get also end up going into the raffles that we do because they're fresh, still in the box, never been used, brand new book that never got opened. I do grab things from my clients that end up being raffle items because they're still in perfect condition. And so we do raffle those off as prizes at the retreat as well. So I love my beady friends. We have a great time, and the white elephant table is a perfect microcosm of put it on the river and watch it go to someone else. That was my bead retreat experience.
Excellent. Thank you for that report.
You're welcome.
The next topic I wanted to talk about is maintaining organizing momentum. We're more than halfway through January, and we hope you're off to a good start on your 2020 goals. But if you're struggling a little, you may not be the only one. I read this week that research conducted by Strava, a fitness monitoring app, tracked more than 800 million user-logged activities and predicted that the day most people are likely to give up on their New Year's resolutions is January 19th.
Strava so that was just this weekend.
Yeah, it was just a couple days ago. Strava calls that Quitter's Day.
Quitter's Day? That's hilarious. I love that. So, oh my gosh. So if you feel like you're, struggling to not be quitting, know that you're in good company, and hopefully we can circle you back to doing some things, to getting back on the task again. And not being lost. So we had some commentary from Reba on Facebook, and she said, I worked until 4 a.m. in my office one night, but as I got ready to return to my job the next week, it hardly looked like I'd accomplished anything, and my kitchen still looks cluttered. Is this normal? And I have a whole bunch to say about that, so we're going to sort of unpack all of the ways that all of the things I have to say about that, basically. If you're already having trouble in January, the first thing to check is that you set a goal that's specific and measurable and of manageable scale. So the example is, instead of saying, and I talked about this when we were talking about creating habits, instead of saying, I want to be healthier, you want to create a measurable, specific, manageable goal, like I want to exercise 3 days a week for 30 minutes. And that's something that's trackable and measurable. And so doing that instead of having a more nebulous goal makes it easier for you to watch yourself and say, hey, it's Quitter's Day, but I walked 3 days this week, and so I'm still working towards my goal. How this relates to Reba's office scenario and her example of working in her office and working until 4 a.m. and feeling like it's not done at the end, we often underestimate how long it will take to accomplish a specific goal. So it's really easy to get discouraged when it takes a long time for the progress to be visible. And this is particularly true in an office with paper, because paper, here's this stack of paper that's an inch high is like 500 sheets of paper, right? When you go buy a ream of paper, there's a million pieces of paper in there. And when you're sorting through an office and stacks of paper, you're making a decision with every piece of paper you touch, because you have to look at it and go, is this a piece of paper that is important to me or not? And so it's an endless series of decision making. And the result of progress, what progress looks like, is all of those papers are either in the recycle bin, in the shredder, or you have now put those pieces of paper where they're supposed to be, in a to-do system, in a file for retrieval later. Those pieces of paper disappear into various places, and then what you see is the absence of a stack of paper. Right? So it's hard to look at that and go, oh, I got so much done. You have to remember that that stack of an inch high paper was hours and hours of decision making and processing that you did, and not be discouraged that it doesn't look beautiful in your office. Here's another thing about feeling like you've worked and gotten nowhere after many hours. Sometimes it looks worse before it gets better. And this is true no matter what you unpack, whatever project you're trying to make headway on. Part of the initial process is to pull all the stuff out. So when you do this in a closet, you pull a bunch of clothes out, or you pull all the stuff out off the floor. When you do it in an office, you pull all this paper out and start messing with it. When you do it in the kitchen, you open cabinets and you pull all this stuff out of the cabinet. And so there's always a lot more crammed in there than you realize, because you've been cramming in over a long period of time. And then B, when it's all out on the counter, it's like, oh my God, this is totally overwhelming. And some people find that part of the process really discouraging. And in the end, you're going to create chaos before you create calm. And you just have to know that. You just have to know that step one of the process is disrupting your existing systems, whatever they are. So maybe in your office, it's just that all the stuff is piled over in the corner in stacks. And maybe in your closet, it's that everything is shoved under the clothes on the floor. And maybe in your kitchen, it's that you've been shoving things into the kitchen cabinet and closing the door for so long that those cabinets are full to bursting, but the door is always closed. And so they're stored, right? And when you pull it apart, it's like those areas are vomiting out the contents, and it makes a big old mess. You just have to know that this is the whirlwind before the calm, right? This is the storm before the calm sea. And it will always be step one of your process. It will always look crazier before you've tossed the cookies, and then you start to sort the cookies, and you start to redistribute the cookies, and you start taking things out to the trash, and it will look better later. But you have to make it look chaotic first. And knowing that you've done that, and that knowing that that's normal, is something to keep in mind while you're working, so that you don't get discouraged by the hurricane that you have created. Remember that hidden progress is still progress. And what I mean by that is your results, your successful results, are represented by the absence of something, right? On the kitchen counter, maybe it's that you cleared off the kitchen counter and wiped it, and what you're seeing now is a blank counter. And oftentimes clients don't remember we started 2 days ago and we've been working in this kitchen, and now it's all fabulous and everything is clean and put away, and when you're staring at the finished product, you don't remember how bad it was when you started. And as a result, I think it's really important to take pictures in advance, or make lists of all of the bags of trash that you give, or all of the donations you take to the donation centers, keeping yourself informed, tracking your progress as you go, as you aim toward your end goal of absence and clear space, and not only visible what you want to see, will help you know how much work you've done. I mean, sometimes we just need to be reminded that we did a good job, and we like I often say to people, yeah, here we've cleared off this desk, isn't that great? And you can see they're like, oh, how come the whole office isn't done? And I'm like, here, let's look at the 47 bags of trash that are over by the trash can right now, and let's look at my card that is completely full to the gills of all of the stuff that we are now taking to donation, so that you can remember that you actually did a huge amount of work and you got rid of a whole bunch of stuff. And then lastly, this is true about sticking to a diet or sticking to an organizing project. It doesn't matter what project you're working on. Don't sweat the bad days. When you have a bad day and you don't accomplish much and you don't get very far, it's like, yeah, and 2 days before you did a whole lot better, and 2 days after you're going to do good again. So in terms of maintaining a habit, when you have a bad day, don't let that be the quitter's day inaugural launch. You don't want to let that bad day derail your project 100%, because no new habit, no project that you're aiming, no important big scale goal that you're working on is going to be done in a hurry and with a little bit of effort. It's always going to be a constant going back. And decluttering and keeping organized is at first a big project and then a maintenance chore. And so you will be going back to it over and over again, and recognizing that that's true, and that some days you'll do better than others. Save yourself the judgment. There's enough people in the world judging you for things you don't need to be judged for. Don't add yourself to the list. Don't sweat the bad days, because it will be okay, and you will come back to it the next day when you feel better and get more done. That's what I have to say about that.
Well, April commented, I often take a before and after picture, especially if I can only work on something for 5 minutes or so. I can usually see a big difference in even a small amount of time when I look at the pictures. And I think that kind of highlights that we don't give ourselves enough credit.
No, we do not.
The things that we've already done are sort of, water under the bridge.
Out of sight, out of mind, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, they say that mothers always forget the pain of childbirth when they're smiling at their beautiful child. I think that you're looking at the clean and lovely space, and you're super happy about it, and you sort of forget how much work it took to get there. And so you have to be your best cheerleader, and particularly if you have people in your life who are judging you harshly, who are giving you negative feedback, who are not being supportive, who are not helping you, who are really being negative Nellies in your life. If you have those people in your life, you really need to counter that message regularly and being your own cheerleader about it is super important, because ultimately the person that's going to benefit is not going to be the person who's complaining to you. We don't care about that person. We care that you are happy and that you have good results so that you feel better in your space. And the way that you can do that is to set the goals and then be your own best cheerleader for, I did something, I made it happen, and look, I have evidence to prove it. And everybody else can just leave you alone.
Bonnie added, this weekend we decided to declutter our basement storage area. We chose the shelving on the walls, and yes, taking it down was overwhelming, but we pulled about 60%, which was donated or tossed. The end result is that I have empty spaces on those shelves, and I have empty plastic tubs. The mess was worth the result. And yes, I track our tasks and results in a bullet journal for reflection.
Ooh,
Perfect.
I like that you're tracking it in the bullet journal. That's cool. I mean, you know, there's something about our makeup that's like, we want to see it, you know, we want to make a game out of it and track our results and see the evolution. Like it's so helpful to go, this is where I started and these are the 37 steps I've taken to get to where I am now. Congratulations. Good job on the basement. Yay.
And Petra added, just wanted to let you know how much I like this weekly setup.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
And thanks for that. And thanks to everybody. What we're finding is, you know, questions and comments come trickling in the day after, or as people are getting a chance to process what we've talked about. And so,
or watch the video.
It's very helpful to us to hear from you, to know what we need to talk more about. And we're about out of time. So,
oh my gosh, true.
Yeah. I want to remind everybody that we're meeting next week, as usual, Tuesday, January 28th at noon. That's U.S. Central Time. If you're watching this on YouTube, we'd love for you to join us live. To receive notifications about upcoming events, join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. You can also follow us on Facebook by going to cfhou.com/Facebook, or subscribe to our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. We love to hear from our viewers and listeners and fans. So please send us your comments and topic suggestions in the YouTube comments. And you can always reach us through our website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
Da-da-da. Awesome. We are so glad that you came and listened to us talk today. We appreciate you coming live. It's so much fun to have an audience. It's a, you know, digital meeting is a weird experience. So we appreciate that you joined us so that we have an audience. And thank you so much. And we hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.